to those of you joining us on YouTube this morning. And as I mentioned during the reading time, today's theme is humility. The formal definition of humility is the absence of pride or arrogance, having a modest opinion or estimate of one's own importance. My favorite definition of humility comes from Richard Foster. He says that humility is being completely honest about ourselves, others, and the world. And we'll come back to that in a moment. In our me culture, humility can be a forgotten virtue and can be even seen as weakness. The connotation can be negative, because if one is humble, then the individualistic self-made culture in which we live falls apart. Humility, though, is far from weak. Humility is brimming with integrity and strength. There are some misconceptions about humility, though, so let's get on with that. Humility isn't about passivity or being a doormat. Humble people still speak their truth and assert themselves when it is called for. But there's that discernment piece, right? We don't always have to speak or share our opinion or offer advice, especially when it is not requested. I once heard that unsolicited advice is criticism. This is where it may be helpful to practice the pause. My former sponsor called it going to pause land, thinking of your happy place and thinking and hanging out there for a few seconds before you respond to something. Much easier said than done. Visiting pause land takes a lot of practice and humility. In that same vein, our need to control and manage others will grow less and less as we cultivate humility. If you've ever been in a relationship with at least one other human, you know that you cannot control other people. And we don't need to. What if we were just with each other? What if we let others make decisions, even bad ones? Let's be honest, they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. And so often our frustration and anger about other people's decisions comes from our inability to control the situation. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Now, a caveat for recovery. It has been said that in order to be in recovery, we need to focus on ourselves and not others. And that is a true statement. And it is also true that while we are putting our recovery first, we can have a humble spirit about it. Because arrogance is the opposite of humility. Operating from pride is the opposite of operating from humility. C.S. Lewis stated that the more pride we have, the more we dislike pride in other people. A proud person is always looking down on things and people. And of course, as long as you are looking down, you cannot see something that is above you. Having a humble spirit means that we are teachable, meaning we don't think we already know all there is to know. We are open to feedback from others, even if it's not what we want to hear, even if we don't agree. That's humility, being honest about who we are, others, and the world. Honest, no better and no worse. Last thing about what humility isn't about having low self-worth. Humility, first and foremost, is about self-awareness, to have an honest sense of ourselves. For example, if I'm a good writer, on a resume, I will list this under my strengths because it is an accurate representation of my skills. It's being honest about myself, not downplaying what is true about myself and not exaggerating it either. If someone asks me directly, are you a good writer? With the spirit of humility, I would say, yes, I am. What I wouldn't do is go around telling anyone who will listen what a wonderful writer I am. This behavior is driven by ego, is approval-seeking, boasting, and arrogant. Being humble is having a self-awareness to acknowledge that I am a good writer and in context speak my truth when it is appropriate. Interestingly, humility isn't one of those things that we can just wake up one day and possess. Okay, I'm humble now. It doesn't work like that. It's one of those things that once you realize you have it, you've lost it again. We don't get humility directly. It's an indirect kind of process. Some people are born with more humility than others, and others have to practice and be self-aware and intentional about it. So if we can't manufacture humility or acquire it easily, how do we cultivate it? And the first way is service. Folks who operate with a spirit of humility don't need to feel important or need kudos or approval. They genuinely care for and about others. Anytime we serve our higher power or others, we grow in humility. A life that is higher power focused will not steer us wrong. Because when we are attuned with our higher power, that power will keep us on the path of our recovery and lead us to help others along the way. Another way we can cultivate humility is to get to know ourselves and get honest. Each day we are to be doing step 10s, taking an inventory of our interactions, and when we are wrong, promptly admit it. This is self-reflection and getting to know ourselves, our triggers, our danger zone, our weaknesses and strengths, our blind spots. In recovery, step 10s prevent us from getting stuck in resentments and anger especially. I never used to do step 10s unless something huge happened in my day. I felt like they were so extra, but really, I just didn't feel like doing them. I have come to realize that as an addict, I can't afford to have resentments and unresolved anger. Eventually, these will cause me to pick up again. So I put it out to my community that I wanted to have a specific step 10 partner for the month of September. We talked daily for that month and shared our step 10 with one another. And let me tell you something. You get to know someone really well. A, when you talk to them every day, and B, when you have to hear their step 10, their inner feelings and reasonings and blind spots. This was an added and unexpected benefit to keeping me accountable. It deepened a relationship. Initially, it was only going to be for September, but I decided I wanted to keep going. I wanted to keep being accountable to another human being in this way and get to know another person deeply in my community. Additionally, I have learned from consistently and honestly doing step 10s for the last almost 2 months that there is usually a fear that underlies my behavior, and it is frequently the same story for most situations once I get down to it. And the stories that I manufacture in my mind and the assumptions that I make, I'm really good at that. But when I strip all that garbage away, honestly, and write the bare bones truth of the situation, it is startlingly simple. And it humbles me every time. Every time. I make things complicated in my humanness. And that's why I need God to direct me always and everywhere. Prayer is the last way we're going to talk about today to foster humility. If you have been to chapel more than once, you have probably heard me say, pray about it, so I'm not going to disappoint you. You want to grow in humility? Ask your higher power for help in doing that. Ask for humility itself. Ask for service opportunities. Ask for guidance in doing the next right thing. Ask for strength to go to pause land before responding. Ask for what you need and expect that your higher power will deliver. That's a characteristic of humility. Asking for help when we need it. Pride will tell us that if we ask others for help, they will think we're weak or incompetent. Humility is again being brilliantly honest about ourselves, and that is knowing when we need to ask for help. Think of someone in your life that you consider humble. Try to get a picture of that person in your mind as I finish this list of some other characteristics of humility. Someone who is operating from a spirit of humility is genuinely happy for others in their good fortune, as opposed to being jealous or resentful. They accept a compliment graciously, not getting a swelled head or deflecting or explaining it away. They admit when they are wrong. Classic step 10. Lastly, humility requires the ability to acknowledge that our accomplishments were not achieved on our own. That's a biggie. While there is always work to do on our end, we are not an island. This is why it's so important to rely on a higher power, one that is greater than ourselves. This is acknowledging that we don't know everything. We don't accomplish things completely on our own without help. We don't understand everything or the entire story of anything. When we only rely on ourselves and shut our higher power out, we are not practicing humility. Because a big part of humility is surrender. Surrender to a higher power. Surrender to another person, like a sponsor. Surrender to a group, conscience. And trusting that there is a wisdom greater than ours. And being okay with that. That's humility. So when alumni come up here to get coins and they tell us, do whatever they tell you, that's surrender. And that's what humility will do for our recovery and for our relationships with our higher power and others around us. I want to read you something from my phone. I had just finished my message, and then I opened up my devotion for the day. So I want to read it for you because I feel like it applies. This is a little bit different track, but it's still about humility. So it says, trying to do everything today is just another example of self-will run riot. We are not super people and we cannot perform miracles. It is our higher power who makes possible our accomplishments, and his work is done slowly and gradually. God never expects more of us than we are able to deliver. It is our own pride that entices us to tackle the impossible. As long as we are alive, our work will never be finished. Which, sidebar, that can be extremely relieving or extremely frustrating. Each day we are given new tasks to do and new experiences to enjoy. What we do not complete today can be continued tomorrow according to the will of our higher power. So let's take a few moments of silent reflection, and I invite you to think about something that stuck out to you today about humility. Something, whether it resonated with you or surprised you or made you bristle. Think about that thing. and what the next right step might be in your situation. Amen.